The feds have sworn up and down they never, ever consider a home equity tax, but then they pull moves like this. So it just goes to show we need to be constantly on guard for any kind of move by the federal government to bring in a home equity tax.
Hey everyone, I'm Franco Terrazzano, the federal director holding down the fort in Ottawa. Also holding down the fort in Ottawa is our investigative journalist, James Wood. Jimbo, you got another great story for us. And you know what? This is going to sound like a little bit obvious. The only people who may not know that this obvious statement is true is government bureaucrats. But you've dug up some more documents that show, surprise, surprise, people don't want a home equity tax.
So yeah, the government's own study showed 95% of people do not want a home equity tax. And just to recap, a group named Generation Squeeze, they had got just under $500,000 from CMHC to study and promote a home equity tax in Canada, despite the feds swearing up and down they'd never bring in a tax like that. Like, that's been a repeated theme. Multiple times they try to, there's been some chatter about it before. Every time that comes up, the feds say, oh no, we'd never ever do that. But it turns out that CMHC studied the commentary on social media after Generation Squeeze's big report came out in January. And this big report was advocating in favor of home equity tax. They were breaking down how it might work, how it might be rolled out, that kind of thing. And obviously a bit of a controversial topic. So CMHC, they decided to watch how people were talking about it online in some way, shape, or form. So their own report pulled comments from just over 3,000 people on social media from January 5th, 2022 to January 10th, 2022, those 5 days after the report was first published. And like I said, 95% of the people surveyed in that time were not in favor of the tax. So that's not exactly a resounding win for that kind of policy.
Yeah, no kidding. People can't afford homes. The last thing that we want is more tax hikes. Now, let me just provide a little bit of context here with the report. So Generation Squeeze gets these tax dollars, right? And essentially, they try to write a report on how to improve housing affordability. So how in the world can they recommend a home equity tax to improve affordability? I mean, look, tax hikes don't make things more affordable. Tax hikes make everything more expensive. And it was great to see that the vast majority, or at least even the CMHC, recognized that the people on social media commenting didn't buy Generation Squeeze's spin. They're like, no. A home equity tax would increase prices. So it's good to see that, just a random sample of social media commenters have a better understanding of economics than Generation Squeeze. But, Jimbo, we do have a housing affordability issue here in Canada. Now, I've never heard of a tax hike used to build a home. But Jimbo, I mean, what do you think about this housing affordability issue?
Yeah, like it's a bit hard to build a house out of red tape and government debt. It's not going to work. But I mean, it turns out we actually have some good news on this whole issue in the first place, surprisingly enough. In that same package of records that we got back from CMHC, we found emails between senior officials at CMHC talking back and forth about the idea of cutting off future funds to Generation Squeeze for this kind of work. From what the records actually show us, the decision was first raised while CMHC officials were discussing back and forth how to respond back to my own questions about the organization giving another $200,000 to Generation Squeeze back in the spring. They were giving that money to Generation Squeeze to essentially lobby in favor of home equity tax, try and convince public opinion that's a good idea. Now, during the back and forth, after they were called on the carpet for giving that money over for that particular purpose, the CMHC's Wendy Pollard, she raised the idea of having the $200,000 grant run its course and not giving any more money after that to that kind of work. In her words, this again, quoting emails here, it was not worthwhile to give more money to support that tax advocacy work.
So did the CMHC actually follow through on not giving them any more money?
Yeah. So, okay. From what CMHC told me after I saw that email and asked them about it, I'd be 99.9% certain at this time that money won't be flowing anytime soon. I got in touch with the organization and they confirmed to me that it followed Pollard's recommendation to cut funding for any future home equity tax, for any home tax advocacy work. And personally, I take that as a big win because, I mean, any time we can keep the federal government from spending more money on new ways to get more money out of us, pretty good time. The only trouble is that CMHC wouldn't give me a firm answer on whether or not it would rule out any future funding for home equity tax research or future funding for Generation Squeeze. So small win there, but still a bit of good news.
But that's where we're going to have to keep our eye out on there, though, hey, in the future funding.
Yeah, like exactly. Any signs or movements by the federal government to bring in a new home equity tax will be on that and advocating for taxpayers' money to be used properly. In the meantime, I'll be waiting for my last round ATIPs to come in on the topic. Again, the feds have sworn up and down they never, ever consider a home equity tax, but then they pull moves like this. So it just goes to show we need to be constantly on guard for any kind of move by the federal government to bring in a home equity tax. Just be watching for it always.
Yeah. For sure. And look, like there's two things that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau needs to do now. Number one, cut all the waste out of this budget. I mean, stop throwing around money left, right, and center. I mean, we don't need to be spending thousands of dollars on sex toy show in Germany, right? So cut the fat instead of dreaming up new ways to tax Canadians. That's number one. But number two, look, if Trudeau isn't going to come after Canadians with a new type of tax on our homes, then he has to make it absolutely clear that his government will not be funding any more home equity tax propaganda, and that his government won't be funding any more research from Generation Squeeze. So anyways, on that note, look, we're going to keep our eye on this ball. We're going to keep hammering away at any signs of any type of home equity tax in the future.